Hello, my dear friends and net aspirants. Welcome back to High Point, where you will get immense amount of materials related to UGC Net, JRF, English. So, how are you all? I hope all of you are doing great in your life. And in the previous videos, we have seen Geoffrey Chaucer's literary contributions, some details related to his life and career, and also following that, we learned the major works written by Geoffrey Chaucer. So in that video, I already told you that I'm going to make and we will have a separate video about Canterbury Tales, and this is that video, and this is the part 1 of the Canterbury Tales. So we will be having two parts related to the Canterbury Tales. In this video, we will be mainly looking at the prologue of the work, prologue to the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. So before starting our video, let me remind you about my website www.highpoint.in, which makes your journey towards UGC Net and JRF much easier by providing comprehensible, simple and quality materials in the form of audio lectures and downloadable PDFs, and also practice and previous question papers which you can attempt live in the website and know your marks and progress instantly. Okay, moving on, let's now in particular learn about the Canterbury Tales. And Canterbury Tales, Chaucer has composed this work towards the end years of his life from 1386 to 1395. So now some introductory details related to the tales. So it's a collection of stories narrated by 29 pilgrims on their way to the shrine of martyr Saint Thomas Becket in Canterbury. So this particular detail we have already discussed. This particular piece of information we have already seen in the last video about the major works of Geoffrey Chaucer. So it's a story, it's a collection of stories. So from the title itself, we all know that the Canterbury Tales. So it's a collection of stories narrated by how many pilgrims? 29 pilgrims. Remember that figure, 29 pilgrims. So and they are traveling to the shrine of martyr Saint Thomas of Becket, Thomas Becket in Canterbury. So that shrine is situated in Canterbury, okay, and they all gathered in an inn known as Tabard Inn. So these 29 pilgrims, before starting their journey, before starting their pilgrimage to the shrine, they gathered in an inn known as Tabard Inn, and the host is Harry Bailey. Okay, so the host of the inn is Harry Bailey. And we can see that Harry Bailey is the one who suggested the storytelling context to and fro in the journey. So while they are traveling towards the shrine and also while coming back from the shrine, they have to, each of the pilgrims, they have to tell two stories. And originally the plan was that, each of these pilgrims, they should narrate 4 tales. So while they are traveling towards the shrine, each of them have to tell 2 stories. While coming back to, they have to tell 2 stories, each of them. So each of these characters, they should narrate some total 4 stories, but out of the 120 tales, that was the original plan, only 24 tales got written. So Chaucer could only finish 24 tales in the work, and this work is an unfinished work, of course. And let's see some details related to especially the names of the pilgrims. The prioress is a character in here, and it is the name of the prioress is Madame Eglantine. The friar is Hubert. The Oxford clerk is Absalom. Wife of Bath is Alison. The reeve is Alain. So these are some of the names of the pilgrims. So basically the Canterbury Tales got a prologue, a preface kind of writing kind of thing before beginning the stories, so in which mainly Chaucer narrates the characteristics of these characters, the way of their appearance, the strata in which they belongs, the work they are doing, their jobs, their peculiarities, their appearance, their hair color, how what they speak, how they are conducting themselves with others. So he is talking about even the things that they possess, the things that they are telling while they are traveling. So in that way, Chaucer is actually narrating about the features of the pilgrims. So this, by reading this prologue, we can see that the pilgrims, they actually represents a cross section of the society. From every other section of England, then England or Britain, we can see a representation in that pilgrim, in that group of pilgrims. Okay. Now, moving on, John Dryden said about this particular work, especially about prologue, as here is God's plenty. So this is a comment made by John Dryden. John Dryden belongs to which age? He belongs to the Restoration age of English literature, and he is known as the father of English criticism. Who told him? Who called him as father of English criticism? Samuel Johnson. I hope you remember all those details. So John Dryden, he comments about the prologue to the Canterbury Tales as here is God's plenty. So he says that not only plenty of people are there, but also the considering the features of the pilgrims, the variety of food and wine described in the prologue, the variety of economy that could feel that we could see in the in that prologue, and wealth of skills, people from different kind of people who are doing different kind of jobs, engaged in different kind of skills and life situation, they are gathered together. And in terms of attitude of the pilgrims also, we can see that here is God's plenty. Because of all these reasons, Dryden called this particular prologue or the particular group of pilgrims as here is God's plenty, especially in terms of narration, that a kind of narration and observation that Chaucer shows and displays in this particular prologue. Remember that. Then what was the contest? So Harry Bailey, the host of the inn, he was himself a traveler, was a pilgrim in the group, and he suggested the storytelling contest, like I said, and the best storyteller will be awarded an elegant dinner at the end of the trip, and the host himself he himself was the judge of the contest. The original plan was that each character will narrate 4 stories, and out of 120, only 24 tales were written, that we already seen. And the book contains a general prologue. So the Canterbury Tales contains a general prologue, like I said, which tells about the features of the pilgrims, and that provides the characterization of the pilgrims. Then the pilgrims represents all sections of the society, from gentry to the humble craftsman. Okay. Now, these are the pilgrims of the Canterbury Tales: the knight, the squire, the yeoman, the prioress, the monk, the friar, the merchant, the clerk of Oxford, sergeant of law, the franklin, guildsman, the cook, shipman, the physician of medicine, okay, the wife of Bath, the parson, the plowman, the miller, the manciple, the reeve, the summoner, the pardoner, the host, the narrator. So these are the pilgrims, or the group of pilgrims contains these people. So once, twice, thrice, and come back to this point as many times as possible in order to memorize the pilgrims' names. Okay. So in a one sit and all, you cannot memorize all these things, that quite unnatural, but you have to not only to this but also every other points that you are taking down, or you are doing not only from my video, but if you are listening to the audio lectures, any kind of lectures related to UGC NET English, you have to write it down. Sometimes I feel that I can memorize the things written in my own handwriting better than studying from a printed paper, or studying from a book and all. So if you make notes, that actually contribute to memorize that thing more. Okay, so in that way you have your own ways to learn, but come back and also revise all these details as many times as possible to make it more memorable. Now, one by one, we are going to take each and every pilgrims and see some of the characteristics of the knights. I am not included all the detailed, minute and tiny details about these characters, because Chaucer is telling plenty of details about each one of them. That is quite impossible here in YouTube video too, but I have given a separate section for Canterbury Tales in my website known as www.highpoint.in. You can go and check whether I am telling the truth. So and you can listen to the audios once you subscribe it, and you can have the enormous amount of materials I have provided about, not only about Canterbury Tales, about Shakespeare, about every other important figures associated to English literature as such. So you can visit that. Now the first pilgrim is the knight. So the knight must be very chivalric, truthful, honorable, generous, courtesy is. So these are the major features of the knight that we have here in Canterbury Tales, and he participated in various wars and battles. Especially, he fought for Christianity, and he is very wise. At the same time, he is very modest as a maid, and he is very wise and clever, as well as very prudent and modest as a maid. And he also possessed good horses, and he wore a tunic with thick cotton cloth. So that is the cloth that he wore, and also these are the some of the features of the knight. So he must be belongs to the upper class of the society, to the royalty, right? Next is squire. The squire is knight's son. Okay, the squire is knight's son, who is young, who is a lover, and he is a spirited bachelor, and he is 20 years of age. And he is dressed a short gown, loose sleeves, and coat had a meadow embroidery in it. So he wore a coat on which it has meadow embroidery. So embroidered meadow. And he always sings, and he plays on flute. He knows how to play flute, and he is very courteous. So like his father, he is also very courteous, modest, and very serviceable, and he is also a good fellow like his father. The next one is the yeoman. So the yeoman, and yeoman is the servant of the knight. Okay, knight's son is there, and knight's servant is the yeoman. And yeoman also has wore a coat and a green hoodie. Okay, a green hooded coat that he is wearing, and under his belt he has a sheaf of peacock feathered arrows. So the yeoman possesses under his belt a sheaf of peacock feathered arrows, and he has very close cropped hair. So hair is close cropped, and on his chest, in his breast, he has a silver image of Saint Christopher. Okay, on his breast, on his chest, he has a silver image of Saint Christopher. The next one is the prioress. And then the next pilgrim is friars. I'm going a little bit fast because you can obviously pause the video and write down these points if you want. And also, if I go on explaining this is going to be very lengthy, but because we have to more than 20 pilgrims are there, 29 are there, but you have to understand that the guildsman, they are 5 in number, and the nun also process another nun, and 3 priests. So sum total we have 29, but more than 20 mentions are there in the prologue. So I am going little bit fast. You can pause the video and you can write down all these things if you want. So the prioress is a nun, and she is very silent and simple, and she is called as Madame Eglantine. So the name of the prioress is Madame Eglantine, and her oath is by Saint Louis. So this is her oath. Okay, so she also carries a gold bright brooch, so in which some words are inscribed, which is Amor Vincit Omnia. So don't get confused by these two. Okay, her oath is by Saint Louis, and her gold bright brooch has an inscription on it, which is Amor Vincit Omnia. The English translation is Love Conquers All. Then she had small dogs, and she fed them with roasted food or milk or bread. And along with the prioress, there is another nun, and also 3 priests. Okay, 3 priests, and another nun is also with the prioress. And Chaucer is little bit sarcastic when he describes prioress, because she is so naive, and she will even cry when she sees that a dog or a mouse is trapped in somewhere, and a mouse is at pain. but she won't even give anything to the beggars. She is not crying while a human being is suffering there. So that kind of a person is Pyrrhus, but he is not in a way directly condemning Pyrrhus for being like that. But when we read the part describing Pyrrhus, we feel that Chaucer is being very sarcastic here, while especially when he says that she fed her dogs with roasted food, milk, and bread, while she remained unaffected with the sufferings of the human beings. Next one is the monk. The monk, the monk, being a monk, even he loved hunting. So, in many places, when he describes pilgrims and their characteristics, their appearance, their way of life, their attitude, their preferences, he remains very sarcastic. We will feel that even though directly never Chaucer says or condemns or criticizes them, but he remains very sarcastic when describing about them. So here see, the monk actually very interested in hunting, and he believed that let old things pass. He is very modern in thinking, and he says that everything that is old should pass and something new should come along. And she also the monk also had a pin made of gold with him, and he is far fat and bald headed. So about his appearance, he has a very stout body and also a bald headed, so his head was bald. Then we have the friar. Okay, the friar's name is Hubert. Remember his name, the friar's name is Hubert, and he knows much flattery and sweet speech. He is very equipped with this flattery kind of talking, and also sweet speech, and he possessed a very great relations to rich farmers and women especially, and his tippet was full of knives and pins to give to young women.
Why? Because in order to seduce them, maybe most probably in order to get attraction from them, in order to seduce them, to have a talk with them, to have a sweet speech with them. So he always keeps this kind of things in his tippet. And he also performed and he also performed many marriages of young women at his expense. So this is a funny thing that Chaucer tells about Freyr. He never directly says why he performed many marriages of young women at his expense. Something may went wrong with the women and between women and the friar, and a situation, urgent situation may have arrived in which the friar has to perform the marriages of young women at his expense. You can imagine that urgency. Then he is labeled as the best beggar in the house because of this flattery and sweet speech. Usually people tend to like such people very much, so he is labeled as best beggar in the house. Let's move on. The next one here is the merchants. About the appearance of the merchant, he had a forked beard and spotted clothes. So he had a forked beard and he wore spotted clothes, and he always talk about increasing his profit. So he's obviously a merchant. What he will talk in any way. So he always speaks truth. So this is again a sarcastic comment by Chaucer. He always talks about increase and his increase in his profit. So he only talks about truth. So that is a contradictory thing. So if you want to make profit always, increase your profit, then you just cannot talk truth always. But here Chaucer says that the merchant always speaks truth. So that's again a very contradictory thing, or a sarcastic manner. In a sarcastic manner, Chaucer makes this comment about the merchant. Then another person here, the next pilgrim, is the Oxford clerk. So Oxford clerk means Oxford scholar in Oxford University. And his name is Absalom. So Oxford clerk's name is Absalom, and he's a scholar of Oxford, and he studies logic there. And he has a very lean horse, and he is also himself. He is not very thick, but he is not fat. He is but very lean and slender person, and he is not at all worldly minded, and he is not about to secure an employment. While he is studying Oxford and all, he can secure, by by influencing people, by giving some practicing some malpractices, he can actually secure an employment, a job there. But he was not at all a worldly minded person, so he never cared about such kind of worldly things. And he always very eloquent in his moral quality. He is very sound in his moral quality. He is morally very up to that level. He is very morally is very high level, and he learns gladly and teach gladly. Learn this line, because always remember, when you hear this, learn gladly and teach gladly. We have to remember the Oxford clerk, because I have seen in one of the previous question papers who just telling this line, whom you can remember, who is learn gladly and teach gladly. So it was Oxford Clerk of Pilgrim, who's a pilgrim of the Canterbury Tales. The next one here is the sergeant. Okay, the sergeant at law. He's very wise, and he's full of knowledge and authority, and he seemed busier than he was. He always talks about that. He's always busy, and he's doing that, he's doing this. He always seemed busier than he really was. And his writings are so flawless that no man could find any fault or any corrections in his writing. So his writings were so flawless, and he was such a wise and full of knowledge and authority he had always. The next one after the sergeant is the Franklin. Franklin is a free tenant of the crown. Franklin is a free tenant of the crown, and his beard was white as a daisy. Daisy is a flower, a white flower, and his beard was white as a daisy flower. And he was a man with the best stock of wine. So he had the best stock of wine at hand. So Chaucer is a wine merchant's son, so obviously he will have much knowledge about best wine, and also he says that particular detail about Franklin. Then he had a short dagger and a pouch made of white silk. Who Franklin had a short dagger and a pouch made of white silk. Moving on, the next pilgrim here is the guildsmen. The guildsmen are five in number. Which are they? Who are they? A harbor dasher. So first guildsman is a harbor dasher, then a carpenter, a weaver, a dyer, and a tapestry maker. So these five persons together known as the guildsmen. Okay, the guildsmen. So these are the guildsmen, and they worked perfectly and nicely. Next comes the cook. So cook must be very good at cooking, and he also knows about London ale. So the cook is very much knowledgeable about London ale, and where you can find the best London ale and all. The next pilgrim that we could see after the cook in the prologue to the Canterbury Tales is the shipman. The shipman is directly coming from Dartmouth. Okay, so the shipman is directly from Dartmouth and joined the pilgrimage, and he wore knee-length woolen clothes. So that is his clothes. He wore knee-length woolen clothes, and he had a very brown complexion because of the summer weather that he often travels in the ship, and because of that's the influence of that season too, he had a brown complexion, and he was very hard and prudent in undertaking. So he was very wise at making decisions, and he was also hard and prudent in the undertaking. The next one here is the doctor of physics. A doctor of physics, he is equipped with astronomy and knows all the causes of every illness. So he is equipped with astronomy. So whenever a patient arrives and approaches him, he will look after some astronomical calculations related to that patient and the stars and all, and according to that he will prescribe the medicine for the illness. So that's how he knows the cause of every illness. And he was very true and perfect practitioner of medicine, and he knows all philosophers in the field of medicine. So he was very knowledgeable about his own profession, and the philosophers and medical practitioners of the past time. So that is so the doctor of physics is a very knowledgeable person and he is equipped with astronomy. So this point about the doctor of physics is very important. Remember that. Next one here is wife of Beth. So wife of Beth is generally we see her as the most developed characters or most developed pilgrims among the all the pilgrims of the prologue. So wife of Beth is known as the most developed character in the prologue or Canterbury Tales as such. And her name is Alison. So wife of Bath's name is Alison. She is very rich and she is somewhat deaf and she is gap-toothed. Okay, and she is into cloth making business and she had very bold face and hair and red hue. You know, her face had a red hue and her face is very fair and bold. And she had five husbands and she's gap-toothed and she knows remedies of love and she often we can see great amount of description about wife of Beth, about the way of her appearance, how she will go to church and about that experience and appearances and the each and everything, how she always talks very loud and she always laugh very loud and she's kind of big mouthed and also she has crossed many channels and also visited many pilgrim centers and holy places and all. So we can see enormous details about wife of Beth. I have only mentioned very important among them. Okay. So if you want a complete kind of very detailed description of all these pilgrims, you can visit my website. I think I have given this particular the audio about this particular topic as a demo audio, so you can go there and hear it and you can have more details about it, or you can subscribe to the course and you can systematically move forward to the UGC NET and JRF. The next person comes after wife of Beth is the parson. Parson is a good religious man and he's poor. He's a poor parson of town. So since he is very religious and good and not doing any unchaste things in his life or religiously living, and he had holy thoughts and he's a learned man. That's why he's very poor, and he's very poor person of town, and he had holy thoughts and he's a learned man and he preached Christ's gospel truly in the sense that first he did everything that he teaches, then only he taught, then only he preached those thoughts, that holy way of living, and also he's truly an example of holy way of living. And here, when he describes about the parson, he says that Chaucer says that if gold should rust, what shall iron do? So mainly, by saying this, he refers to the corruption prevailing in the church and institutions of church, and the malpractices that clergy people are generally, priests, prayer partners are generally doing. So if gold should rust, gold usually never rust, right? So if gold should rust, what shall iron do? So iron means the common people. If the clergy people related to church and we consider them holy and all, if they are doing some malpractices, if they are corrupted and they have turned into worldly minded, then what shall the common people will do? They will look at them and they will practice the same, right? So, so this particular dialogue, this particular comment Chaucer makes while he is explaining the good character, the parson. The next one here is the plowman. The plowman, he's a true laborer and he's living in peace and he's also doing perfect charity and he loved God best and loved his neighbors right as himself. So these two are the major things that God put before us, that you have to love the God at your best and you have to love his neighbors as yourself. So he's doing that. The plowman is, since he's a very good hearted and true laborer and who's doing perfect charity and living in peace, he's loving the God at his best and he's also loving his neighbors right as himself, and he paid his debts perfectly. The next one here is the miller. The miller had very big bones and muscles and he always drinks rum. So that is his habit. He always drinks rum. While he was traveling, he was always drinking rum and also making, bawdy jokes and all. And he is short, broad-shouldered, and a stout fellow. You can imagine the miller as a short fellow who has a broad shoulder and who is stout as well, who is fat. And he had a red beard and large mouth, and still corns very well and take toll 3 times the measure. So he's not at all a good practitioner. He's not truthfully, he's not dealing truthfully to his customers. He steals corn. Those who are miller will mill the corns, right, and make flour out of it. So he steals corn and corn flour from every customer, and he also take all 3 times the measure. And he wore a white coat and a blue hooded hooded thing on him. So that is his appearance. So remember about his appearance and the habit of drinking rum often. The next one here is the Manciple of College of Lawyers, and he is a skilled but unlearned person. So the Manciple, he's an unlearned person who has no much education, but he's skilled at his work and he knows how to solve many situations. How, out of his experiences, he can solve every other situation that he is facing. The next one is the Reeve. Reeve's name is Alain. His name is Alain, and he is slender and choleric man. He is not at all fat or thick, but he is slender and choleric man. And about his appearance, he had a very close shaven beard, and his hair is also hair around his ears. That is also close shaven. And he makes a bargain better than his master. So he must be a favorite of his master, because more than his master he could make a better bargain than his master. And he is sitting upon a very good stallion which is named as Scott. Okay, he has a very good stallion and the stallion's name is Scott, and he is wearing a long blue overcoat, and he had a very he had a rusty sword. So remember these things that he possesses. He is wearing a he is wearing a long blue overcoat and a rusty sword. So remember his name, Alain, and he's a slender, choleric man, and he could make a bargain better than his master. So the next one here is the summoner. So after the reeve, we have the summoner. Summoner had a 5 red cherubian pimpled face and narrow eyes. So this is his face. Okay, appearance of, or the face is appeared like this: 5 red cherubian pimpled face and narrow eyes. Not a big eye, but narrow eyes. And he loved garlic, onions, and drinks strong wine. Sorry for this mistake. Strong wine. So he always loved garlic, onions, and he always drinks strong wine. So his mouth must be very stinky, right? When he's angry, he only shouts in Latin. So this is one of the peculiarity of the summoner. So whenever he is angry, whenever he is shouting very loud, he only shouts in Latin, and he's corrupted, like we could see. And he always says, summoner always says that the purse is the good archdeacon's hell. So this is a comment. This is a usual dialogue by the summoner. Summoner always says this: the purse is the good archdeacon's hell. Remember this this particular statement, which is made by the summoner often. The purse is the good archdeacon's hell. About his appearance: 5 red cherubian pimpled face, narrow eyes, and loved garlic, onion, and drinks strong wine. And whenever he is angry, he only shouts in Latin. After Sumner, we have the Pardoner coming straight from the court of Rome. So he was in Rome, and he straightly comes from Rome, and he joins the pilgrimage. And often he sang very loudly that "Come hither, love to me." So this is a song that he often sings while he was traveling: "Come hither, love to me." And he had yellow hair, and he kept many relics of saints. Relics of saints means, he had, a particular piece of cloth, and he'll say that this is a cloth used by Virgin Mary or some saints. So such kind of things he usually kept, and he usually want to give that to beautiful ladies and women or anyone that he want to influence and all. And he also very capable to do flattery and bawdy jokes. Okay, low bawdy jokes that he makes. So that is about the pardoner. Do remember about it. The next one is the host. So we actually arrived the last two persons here. The host name is Harry Bailey, and he is a good looking man. He's very bold in his speech and wise, full of facts of manhood. So he is a actually very nice person. His name is Harry Bailey. He is very good looking as well as very wise in his speech and conduct with other persons, and he's very wise at making decisions as well, and at the same time he is very merry hearted man as well. And he's the one who suggested the storytelling competition that pilgrim each and every pilgrim has to tell two stories when they're moving towards the shrine, and two stories while they're returning from the shrine. So some total everyone will tell four stories. So that storytelling competition was suggested by the host. And how they will choose who will start the storytelling competition, that he himself suggested that everyone should draw a cut in the sense a twig of various length. So everyone should draw a cut, and the one who has the shortest twig, they should start the story, or they should start telling the stories. That way they will continue storytelling. So everyone should draw a twig of various length, and the one who is getting the shortest cut, that person should start the storytelling competition. So the next person here is Chaucer. Chaucer himself was a pilgrim there in the party, in the group of pilgrims. Now their journey, the whole pilgrims, they gathered in the Tabard Inn, and while they were traveling, the journey begins near St. Thomas's watering place, a brook that crossed the road at a distance from Southwark. So Tabard Inn situates in Southwark. So it is actually they started from Southwark and they stopped there. Near St. Thomas's watering place, and they drew the cut there, and the knight drew the shortest cut, hence he has to start the storytelling competition. So that's all about the pilgrims of the prologue of the Canterbury Tales. So I have mentioned each and every one of them. I have went through only the important things, because otherwise this will become a too lengthy video that I can't afford to do in YouTube. We have always a time restriction here, and it will make unnecessarily a lengthy video there. So if you want more details, you can visit my website www.highpoint.in, and obviously you can mention any other comments, any other suggestions, and any other topics that you want me to make about UGC NET English language and literature. Do that mention in the comment section as well, and you can find me in this places in my website, in my number, as well as through this email also you can reach out to me. And yeah, if you like my video, please subscribe to my channel, and also press the like button. Also share this to your friends, those who are also studying for UGC NET and English. Let's meet in the next video. Until then, bye bye. Thank you.